For centuries, Stoicism has served as a guide for those seeking wisdom and spiritual strength. It offers not just a philosophical theory, but practical tools applicable in our daily lives. Despite the changing times, our problems remain consistent: stress, emotional instability, and absolute uncertainty. Today, we'll delve into the key ideas of William Irvine's new book, The Stoic Challenge. Irvine, with 40 years of teaching philosophy and practical Stoicism, combines theory and application. In this video, I'll share the crucial concepts from the book that directly influence our outcomes. Whether you view it as a self-help book or not, the law of order suggests that 20% of effort yields 80% of results. The remaining 20% requires 80% of effort. Now, let's explore the key ideas from the Stoic Challenge that directly impact our results. Enjoy the viewing. Karen Salmonson once said, "Someday, you'll look back and realize that all the problems and failures you experienced in life made you stronger and ultimately led you to a better place." I was particularly drawn to the story of astronaut Neil Armstrong, selected as the lunar module pilot for the Apollo 8 spacecraft. His mission was to refine the lunar landing technique. Armstrong trained on the lunar module simulator on Earth, successfully piloting it numerous times. However, on May 6, 1968, the control thrusters malfunctioned during a practice run, causing the simulator to tumble chaotically. 2 seconds before it would have overturned completely, Armstrong ejected. The simulator crashed and instantly turned into a ball of fire, with Armstrong parachuting safely to the ground, only to bite his tongue upon landing. Armstrong emerged unscathed from the mishap a few hours later. Meanwhile, Neil, still clad in my flight suit, was busy filling out paperwork. Another astronaut named Alan Bean, who happened to be in the area, greeted Armstrong and continued on his way. It was there that Bean was informed of what had occurred, and with skepticism, he returned to the office to inquire further. Doubtful, he asked Armstrong if he had indeed crashed the landing module. Armstrong replied, "Yes, I crashed it." When pressed for details, Armstrong succinctly explained, "I lost control, and I had to eject with a parachute from that darn thing." That was it, brief and clear. Remember, as I mentioned, in the phrase, "something bad happened," there are 2 components: the objective event and the subjective assessment of it being bad. The renowned astronaut refrained from labeling and swiftly let go of the situation, acknowledging that it happened and that was that. By the way, Neil eventually became the first person whose foot stepped onto the surface of the moon. As the saying goes, success in philosophy is not expressed in speeches or descriptions, but in the resilience of spirit and the reduction of desires. Actions speak louder than words. The second of the 4 noble truths in Buddhism, constituting its essence, states that the cause of all suffering is attachment. The desire to possess something lies at the root of almost every form of human activity. Instead of savoring the good as it happens and experiencing unpleasant events as they occur, we tend to cling to what we like, striving to keep it forever, and repel everything we dislike, trying to avoid it at all costs. This is how attachments are formed. From a Buddhist perspective, pain is inevitable, but suffering is not, as they are conditioned by attachments, which in turn attempt to deny the undeniable truth that everything is impermanent. Whether you are strongly attached to your physical appearance and will undoubtedly suffer as you age, or you become accustomed to luxury, turning your entire life into a painful, fear-infused struggle to preserve it. If you are too attached to life, your fear of death will intensify. However, non-attachment does not imply alienation from oneself, the suppression of natural impulses, or self-denial. It is a life philosophy devoid of bias and aversion to all internal and external manifestations, considering the interconnection between misfortunes and desires. One might say that a person devoid of desire would have no misfortunes, and conversely, for those who seek perfection, hardships become a habitual occurrence in their probably very unhappy existence. As William Shakespeare said, "I always feel happy. You know why? Because I expect nothing from anyone." In 1974, psychologists Omas Tversky and Daniel Kahneman conducted an experiment using a fake wheel of fortune. Participants believed the wheel could display any number from 1 to 100, but only two numbers appeared, 10 or 65. The wheel spun once before the participants, who were then asked two questions. The first question was whether the number on the wheel was greater or less than the proportion of African countries in the United Nations. The second question was about their perceived correct percentage. Those who received 10 on the wheel, on average, assumed that 25% of UN member countries were African. Those who received 65 believed this number to be 45%. This behavior seemed strange, as the appearing number on the wheel was clearly unrelated to the percentage of African countries in the UN. The fake wheel in Kahneman and Tversky's experiment became an anchor in participants' subconscious minds, influencing their subsequent reflections on the world. In these experiments, participants' consciousness lacked information for rational assumptions. Instead of acknowledging their ignorance, it handed over the word to their subconscious, which gladly shared its conjectures. However, these guesses were distorted by anchors in the form of numbers 10 and 65, which immersed themselves in participants' subconscious. Absolutely all companies employ the anchoring effect to sell their products and services. Let's consider a scenario in an Apple store where last year's iPhones are for sale. Assume that the store manager has two retail plans. Plan A is a straightforward price of $320 for the iPhone, while Plan B is priced at $400, but with a 20% discount. Plan B holds a psychological advantage due to the anchor of the regular price being $400. As a result, when the iPhone is sold with a discount, customers feel they made a great deal, saving a substantial $80. Let's revisit the words with which this section began. I always feel happy. You know why? Because I expect nothing from anyone. Ancient Stoic philosophers were far ahead of these psychologists and businessmen. They utilized the anchoring effect not to trade shirts, but to improve their lives. They achieved this by regularly contemplating what could become much worse in their lives. This might seem like a recipe for a gloomy existence, but in reality, it was the opposite. Engaging in negative visualization influenced how they perceived their current situation. Instead of comparing it to an ideal state that people typically dream of, they juxtaposed it with an imaginary worst-case scenario, leading to the conclusion that everything wasn't so bad. This process became known as negative visualization and stands as one of the most popular and useful psychological tools from the Stoic toolkit. Framing is another intriguing psychological phenomenon employed by ancient Stoics, later rediscovered and studied by modern psychologists. While the anchoring effect allows us to accurately assess our life circumstances, framing can be used not only to prevent hardships from disturbing our peace, but also to, in some cases, experience them with joy. Suppose a doctor informs you that you have a serious illness and presents two medical procedures for you to choose from. He explains that one procedure guarantees a 90% survival rate in the first month, while the other entails a 10% chance of death. Which procedure would you choose? Many people would be drawn to the first procedure due to its high survival rate. However, upon closer examination, it becomes clear that the options are essentially equivalent. Still, people don't always think rationally. Their choices are influenced by how the options are framed, especially in terms of survival, making it seem more attractive than an equivalent choice framed in terms of mortality. Stoics have long recognized and appreciated the power of framing, even though they did not use this term to describe it. As Epictetus pointed out, people are not disturbed by things, but by their view of them. Marcus Aurelius also wrote about it, stating that if something irritates us, the fault lies not in the object itself, but in our judgment of it, and it's within our power to change that judgment. Life can be likened to an art gallery where paintings represent daily experiences. While we have limited control over the content of the paintings, we have considerable power over the frames we choose for them. It turns out that framing changes everything. A picture in one frame that looks terrible can appear magnificent in another. Continuing the analogy with an art gallery, an optimist is someone who typically places life's paintings in frames that make them beautiful, while pessimists make them look ugly. Winston Churchill once said, "A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty." Stoics refer to this perspective as discipline of perception. Writer Jean Adlov shares a compelling story illustrating the power of framing. In her youth, she was invited by two Italians on a diamond hunting expedition in Venezuela, an adventure that seemed marvelous to her. They hired South American Indians as workers and obtained a heavy, cumbersome boat for river travel. During the journey, they had to carry the boat over rough rocks under the tropical sun. Despite the shared hardships, the Italians perceived every cut and blow as an additional adversity, defensively reacting to each one. In contrast, the Indians treated the experience like a game, laughing in response to challenges. Adlov realized that, while everyone performed the same tasks and endured tension and pain, the difference lay in cultural conditioning. They had been conditioned to believe that such living conditions were an integral part of an unequivocally low comfort level. They were unaware that they had a choice. On the other hand, the Indians, equally oblivious to their choice, maintained a particularly joyful state, reveling in camaraderie and considering each step forward a small victory. The main idea of the entire book, aptly titled The Stoic Challenge, is that our interpretation of an event is akin to framing a painting. Place a Rembrandt canvas in one frame and it may look dreadful. Replace it with another frame and it will shine in all its glory. The same applies to the setbacks we encounter. Stoics recommend consciously perceiving them as a sort of trial, especially in the face of unexpected misfortune. Seneca, for instance, asserted that fortune places obstacles on our path not to punish us, but, on the contrary, to challenge individuals, thrusting them into difficult situations to inspire bold action. By doing so, fortune increases their chances of attaining the highest perfection. Seneca said, "Whom fortune favors, the brave pursue; whom she pursues, the brave overtake; and whom she smiles upon, the brave assail with redoubled vigor." It is an endless cycle of trials and challenges that serves to harden and fortify those it has singled out. The Stoic Epictetus emphasized that difficulties reveal the true nature of individuals. So, every time you face a challenge, remember that fortune, as your mentor in the struggle, has positioned a formidable opponent against you. Why does she do this? To ensure that you emerge as the victor in the Olympic Games of life. Achieving success without effort is implausible. Irving suggests approaching failures of any scale as a test of resilience and an opportunity for improvement. It is crucial to evaluate daily achievements by making journal entries. Seneca's practice of scrutinizing the entire day each evening, leaving nothing concealed, becomes a valuable habit. At the end of each day, self-reflection becomes a judgment day, as Irving puts it, an opportunity to carefully examine every word and action. The goal is to avoid hiding mistakes, but instead to address them by saying, "Look ahead, don't repeat this. I forgive you now, but not in this matter." It is about being just as strict in self-evaluation as in evaluating others. By doing so, one not only learns from mistakes, but also grows. Remember, there's nothing to fear from one's errors if you can tell yourself, "Look ahead, don't do that now. I forgive you. But in this matter, don't ever behave like this again." It's about being vigilant without being excessively harsh, offering constructive criticism rather than causing harm. So scrutinize your day not only for truthfulness, but also for the recipient, whether they welcome the truth. A good person appreciates warnings, while a less virtuous one becomes more furious the more they are corrected. If you found this video enjoyable, I earnestly request you to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement significantly contributes to the channel's promotion and development. Farewell, until our next encounter.